everybody. This is our seventh session in our week of homeschool startup back to 2024 curriculum. And today we're very lucky to get Pat Murray from Maths Online. He has been, he's a big wig in the maths community, and he has lots of maths companies across Australia, America, India, New Zealand. So we're very privileged to have him with us today. And if you've used Maths Online before, you've already had his soothing voice talking to your children. But today we're lucky enough that he's going to talk to us parents. So we've already done one interview with Pat a few months ago, and so we're not going to go over those things so much, because if you want to hear those things where we were talking about maths anxiety, you can listen to our podcast YouTube version of that. And today we're going to be talking with Matt about laying good foundations for maths. So welcome, Matt.
Pat.
Pat, you know, I called you Matt last time,
and it's the maths and
my kids have been teasing me about it ever since, and they've been saying to me every time they walk past, they go, "Welcome, Matt. I'm going to make you say it, Mum. I'm going to make you say it," and they did. So sorry about that, Pat. Welcome, Pat.
Look, thanks, Michelle. Thanks for that intro. Look, I'm really delighted to be here. I see a whole bunch of homeschool mums there, which is great. Don't see any homeschool dads, but you know,
there could be some on.
I know what
there's one that says father.
Is there? Okay. The ones on my screen I can see. Anyway,
yeah.
It's great. So thanks for the invite, Michelle and Amanda. Happy to be here. Okay. Oh, Niv, I can see Niv. Yes, there's a homeschool dad. There we go.
Okay, good.
Anyway, so great. Yeah, no, I'm. Hopefully I can help you out with any questions you might have. I'll certainly do my best. So let's get going, hey?
Okay, all right. Well, another thing, I just want to thank Pat for coming, because he's just coming off a bit of sickness. So if he coughs in the middle of it, we'll have to forgive him. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is how important early math skills are, and you know, the preschool skills or the kindy and year one. How important are they for future math success?
Well, I think they're very important, and I think one of the good things about starting early is that you can, you know, and I think everybody does this. They start in a very non-threatening or very non-formal way with maths, and you just, you know, maths is part of everyday life, in, you know, initially, you know, counting and so on. But when, I guess, the skills that they'd want to get when it becomes a bit more formal, it is essential to do a fairly routine and consistent approach with maths, and a steady approach, like when the kids are starting in school or starting at home with you, is to make it, I would suggest, a regular part of every day. And whether that's 20-25 minutes or so, even from the very start, I think that's really important, because I do see from experience over time, that's with homeschoolers and in school settings itself, that once a kid gets a little bit behind or they don't know a little bit something, and they should, because, you know, initially it should be fairly basic and routine. It affects their confidence. You know, and it can, and unless you actually sort of keep building it from the very start, you know, the confidence we can always bring it back, but it's a bit of a challenge unless you get those foundations right. I guess do you want me to talk a little bit?
Well, you said 20-25 minutes a day. Do you mean 20-25 minutes a day of sit down book work, or do you mean just introducing sort of maths ideas? So when they're setting the table, you can say, you know, we've got 4 sets of families coming today. How many, you know, forks are we going to have to put out?
Yeah, well, I guess it's age appropriate, Michelle, but those sort of things, yeah, you know, as soon as they're old enough to set tables, that's great. So I guess the 20-25 minutes, I guess I'm talking about when you are bringing in maths as a subject that you are teaching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Hmm. All right. Do you think you can start maths too early? So do you think you should be sort of drilling times tables when they're 3 years old, or do you think it's something that you can get a bit of burnout with?
look, I don't think you get burnout, but I think, and as as parents yourself, you'll be able to see whenever you want to introduce something. I wouldn't discourage you from introducing anything at any time. But what I would be very what you'd want to be very conscious of is what you introduce, how quickly your child is getting it. If it's a real struggle that they're trying to get something, then that means you probably introduced it a little bit too early. So that's okay. You just wait for a while. And I guess one of the best points of advice I can give any parents really when they're helping their kids learn anything is that the kids all learn at different ages, or take on things at different ages, and don't ever be really worried or get stressed out a bit thinking that, oh, my child is a year behind what I think they should be. And I think we might have even talked about this last time, Michelle, where we've had instances, and you've had plenty, and I've had plenty over the years, where parents have come to me and had that problem, saying, okay, look, my child probably should be doing second grade year 2 maths now, but they're not. I've been trying to do it, but they're quite not ready for it. And I've said, well, look, you're right. They're probably not ready for it if they're really struggling with it, because year 2 maths shouldn't be too hard. So what we found is that let's just stick with the level that they're comfortable with at that point. I mean, you always want to progress and learn a bit, but don't be surprised that a few years down the track that your child can do 2 years of maths work. Sometimes I've seen, in some cases, 3 years of maths work in 1 year, just how their brain develops and
Wow.
they start picking up and so on. So that's not unusual. So that's why I've always, try to let parents take the stress out of thinking, wow, they're 8 years old, they should be here. They're 9 years old, they should be here. The kids are so different, and just don't panic about that.
That's a really good point, because one thing we often get, and one of the reasons we chose not to try to get put a math text into our curriculum, was because of that, is because kids vary in their maths so much, and we'll have parents who will send us an email and they'll say, my child's not very good at English, but they're 3 years ahead in maths.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've wondered if it's a good idea that they keep going with the higher level maths when their English is behind it. Do you think, if their kid just likes maths and they just want to do maths all the time, but they don't like English and they can't, well, obviously you have to be able to read a bit, because you get to certain maths problems where you have to be able to read. What do you think about that, about the kids who just want to go all the way?
Yeah. I love those kids who just want to do math. No, not. What I would suggest is that if they're progressing and they really like it, I wouldn't put the brakes on them. But certainly, you want them to not necessarily keep that same level in English, okay, because they're just not necessarily that way inclined. I know when I was a student, I love maths, and I didn't particularly like English, and I hated history, for example. But now, I really enjoy historical stuff and looking at documentaries and stuff like that. So I think an awareness, and as a parent, you'll have the best awareness for your child without a doubt. If they show a real love of a subject, I sort of wouldn't put the brakes on them. But if they have a real love of maths and they don't like English so much, you might just change the structure of the day. Say, well, let's knock over this English before you do your maths. I mean, something as simple as that.
Well, I think sometimes what can happen is their child can spend, an hour and a half doing maths, and they get a bit tired, and so then they don't want to do English. So I think putting the English first is probably a good idea.
Yeah. And
Okay. What about actually we usually don't stop for questions, but I think it might be a good idea just to quickly stop here for questions with the younger grades, because we're going to move on to high school. So if you've got your younger grades question, if there's any there, Amanda, do you want to?
Nev has just made a comment. He's just added an article without looking at it. It's don't let your children study math formally until age 10. But he just said, I found this interesting. Learn the foundations, timetables, etc. early, but formal algebra, etc. should come when the brain is developed at around age 10. Yeah, the link is to a homeschool dad. So that's I don't know whether you want to let Nev explain that, or
Can I make a comment before you do, Pat? I know I went to a homeschool convention one time, and the speaker was Jay Weil, who wrote the Apologia science series. And he was saying, well, you can't really do advanced science until you've done a certain level of maths. And the more difficult maths is that sort of algebra and things like that that sort of turns up in year 7 anyway, doesn't it? Doesn't We're not doing a lot of algebra in year 2.
no, well, it's certainly not called algebra. Yeah, it's I mean, there might be some pattern recognition and stuff, but yeah, if someone has said that they shouldn't do it till age 10, again, I sort of know hard and fast rule on that one in terms of, if kids really at age 10, they might not even be ready to do algebra, so you wouldn't sort of force it down and, okay, you're 10 now, you got to do algebra. Again, I think, like I'll give you, I was talking to Tim Perkins, who was a friend of mine and a university lecturer at Notre Dame in Sydney, and he specialises in primary school, or teaching new primary school teachers. And he, all the research shows that in any particular class in primary, the level, let's say it's a year 3 class, the kids' level can differ by 3 years. So the level of ability, someone might be a year 1 or year 2 student in that class, and someone might be in a year 4 or 5 student in that class, like the ability wise, but they're all lumped together. They're all doing year 3 work. So you can sort of see one of the reasons that the structure in a school environment is quite flawed, unless they have a lot of flexibility where kids can actually learn at their own pace and actually where they're at. Okay, but if the school system isn't set up like that, so and there's no easy fix. I mean, I don't have a solution for that, but that's one of the things. And I guess that if we were going back to the point about age 10 algebra, maybe it's good for some, maybe it's bad for others. I wouldn't be thinking it's a hard and fast rule at all about that.
Yeah, Nev's just added that the gentleman who wrote the article would agree that that it should be dependent on the child. If they're ready, they are ready.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
A few more questions coming in, actually. What is your recommendation in doing the additional content for various years? Natasha's just saying she doesn't understand what is over and above the regular Victorian content and when best to do it. So that I'm assuming that's the additional content within Maths Online.
Right.
So what would you recommend?
Yeah. I guess a little bit of history on that, how we actually got additional material. I mean, we've been going for a long time now. So I guess, a couple of decades now of material that we've developed over all those years. And as curriculums have changed, what we've noticed, unfortunately, is that when they change, they actually change for the worse. And the fact they dumb it down a little bit. So and the reason they dumb it down a little bit is that because the quality and the availability of good maths teachers around Australia and around the world is diminishing. So they essentially don't necessarily have the skills to actually teach a curriculum that was taught. I mean, sort of when I was at school, I guess when I was at 11 and 12, and show my age a bit now, that was back in 84, 85. that curriculum that I studied as a student is much more rigorous than what's available in year 11 and 12 now, unfortunately. So the additional material that we've got in our program is stuff that was part of the curriculum at one stage, and because there's changes in the curriculum, those lessons are removed. Okay, but they're good lessons. They're worthwhile knowledge. So that's why we've kept them, and we've kept them as additional. And also, because even though we talk about Australia talks about a national curriculum, that doesn't really exist, because there's no real national curriculum, because every state wants to do their own thing. So, you know, our program has every state doing their own thing. That's the way the structure of the courses are. So that additional material might be current material from another state, and we think that, well, it's useful material if parents want their kids to, you know, do a bit of extra work.
Yeah.
That's useful to see. So that's probably, I hope that explains that idea of
it. No, that's good.
Now, yeah, I just saw a comment by Yana, and I asked Pat if we could talk about this. So she made a comment that Australia is way behind in the maths, scales. The Singapore and all of those countries, a lot of Asian countries are doing much better. Okay. And I asked you this before, is it our curriculum that has made us fall behind?
Okay, Yana, that is a great question, because I get plenty of people who be thinking about that. What happens is that it's more, I see it more of an attitudinal thing. So in some, and particularly Asian countries, where they I guess value education, unfortunately for us, more than us, right? More than typical Aussies would. So unfortunately, in typical sort of Western society now, education isn't as valued as highly as it was before, or we're allowing our kids not to sort of knuckle down and work possibly as hard as we might have done in past generations. So I think it's more, rather than is their curriculum better than ours? I'd say no. What I would say is their attitude and willingness to work hard is probably at a higher level on average than our average. So I see that as the
I mean, a lot of Asian countries, they go to school for 8 till 4, and then they go to tutoring straight afterwards till 9 o'clock at night. So there is a culture of prioritizing those things.
Yeah.
Whereas in Australia, we're just not like that.
Yeah, I agree. So that's why I'm not worried. Yeah, I never have any concerns, besides once I said that the concerns that we're getting dumbed down a little bit because of the availability of teachers, more so than anything. But I think, look, I think there's not much in it between the curriculums, worldwide. We've got courses that we do in the States as well, and it's just interesting as the way we teach something in the States, it might be a bit different from the way we would teach it here. But I guess one of the things that I've probably had the privilege of doing over a few decades now is because we're exposed to all these different curriculums in different parts of the world, and see different ways of how it's being taught. I guess one of my sort of unique abilities, if you like, is to grab all the best ways that I see things getting taught and sort of wrap it around and bring it back into every course that we have. So I guess in terms of the actual curriculum, is fairly similar. Possibly the methods they are taught are different, and yeah, I think it's pretty exciting that we're in a position where we can bring in what we think is the best way to teach.
I think maths online, I just saw someone, it's a bit hard for Pat to answer one of those questions that just came in, but it was, do you think maths online is a good curriculum? Well, of course you do.
That's an easy question for me to answer.
That's the best curriculum. So just a quick follow-up
Yeah.
from Natasha, just when you're the additional content, when you're saying you're trying to cover all the states back to Australia. So would you suggest that if another state does have a more rigorous program, should she be doing that one and not the Victoria one, or will the additional content kind of cover it across the board in Australia?
The
Natasha,
additional,
that's what
a
you
good
mean.
question. Yeah, the additional content will
So
definitely
not missing
cover
out because they're in Victoria, right?
No, sorry, Amanda. Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, the additional content will definitely cover it. But look, I would, I'd sort of advise whatever state you're in, just stick with that state. I guess in terms of if I just was very critical and thinking, okay, what do I think is the most rigorous? I would say New South Wales is the most rigorous, though in Victoria it's very rigorous as well, with some parts of New South Wales doing it better than Victoria and vice versa. Queensland is pretty close as well. And then the other states, I think they might leave a little bit out in each of the other states. So if I was in another state, I would certainly think about looking into those additional lessons just to sort of beef things up.
So can I just ask, I thought Western Australia, Queensland, South Australia, Tasmania, don't they all just follow the Australian curriculum?
Well, they say they do, but then it is interesting because I mean, just in the last 3 or 4 months, as our company, because we sell our program into a lot of schools all around Australia, and even within states, they're saying so some schools in a particular state might be bringing in the new, say, Year 9, 10 curriculum all at once, whereas other schools in the same state they're going to bring in the new Year 9 stuff, but then leave the current Year 10 stuff as is. And there's certainly no hard and fast rule. I mean, it would be great if Australia's not a real big country when you sort of look at other countries. It would be great if we just decided to have a national curriculum, but for that to happen, that would mean that a lot of state boards, education boards,
might lose their jobs.
Might have to lose their jobs. Well, that is the number one reason. I can't think of
absolutely.
any other reason. That's it. So anyway.
All right. Okay, let's move. Oh, Amanda, are there any more questions?
Sorry, I'll just do this one. So in the younger years, if a new maths concept is really a struggle for the children introduced a bit too early, what should they do? Should they revise the current previous maths level, or what are some good ways to do revision like Maths Online alongside, like, for instance, our first maths lessons that we include in kindy? So just...
no, good question. Yeah, well, if let's say it's a Year 3 lesson and they're getting stuck on a concept, certainly look back then at the Year 2 lesson that would be linked to it. And if you've got to spend a whole lot of time on Year 2 on that little topic, that's okay. And even if you've got to go back another year, that's still okay. I would certainly just make sure you get those foundations right, even if you've got to go back a couple of years. I don't see that as I don't see that as an issue at all. Just as long as you don't put pressure on yourself to think, gee, the kid's not doing as well as they should. So I guess I can't reiterate that enough. To have that long-term confidence that as long as you're working well and working steadily, that things work out well. Sometimes I've heard this described as well, and I think it's a great analogy. And a mentor of mine, Dan Sullivan, from the strategic coach in the States, he talks about having if you think of a rectangular box with certainty and a line down the middle, and there's uncertainty, right? So there's certainty, line, uncertainty. Then in everything you do, it just doesn't relate to math. So I think it's a wonderful analogy. But what our job as parents and teachers is that when we're teaching our kids, is that line, to try to move that line so that the certainty gets bigger and bigger, and that uncertainty shrinks up a bit. So, and they do that when they develop skills and capabilities and confidence, that they become more confident, that certainty grows more. There's always going to be uncertainty. There's always going to be uncertainty in anything. But if you can instill, particularly if they're, coming up to exam time, or if they've got things like that, to be aware of, okay, I what I can control is how much work and effort I'm putting in, and how much knowledge I've got. But there's always be aware there's some uncertainty, and that's part of life.
Yeah.
Now, Mandy, you probably got another question there, but I just want to pop this in because I remember on the last time we did a session together, and I think this is a really helpful thing to do. We had a mum ask, she said, my child does those maths games apps like 2+2 and things like that. But if I sit down and it's on a piece of paper and I ask him to solve the piece of paper, he can't do it on a piece of paper. And I thought the answer you gave was really good. Can you remember?
Probably can't remember, but I'll try my best. Look, it's like when you said like 2+2 on a digital thing in terms of a digital game app or something. I love the idea of the of rote learning and so on. So I don't call it rote learning, but everyone calls it rote learning, or learning by memory and so on. Like, so times tables, for example. I think the best way with times tables is to have some sort of jingle in your head that you've learnt a song or a jingle, but then when it comes to practice, not necessarily to write those down, but to actually have on a game like thing on a digital thing where question comes up, bang, you put your answer in, and over and over and over again, and faster and faster and faster, so that you're not even thinking of the answer; it just comes naturally. So in that aspect, I love the digital side of things. When it becomes where you've got to do pen and paper is when you've got questions that require a bit of working out. Okay, so anything that's just total recall or instant recall, digital's fine. Anything at all that requires a bit of pen and paper, or a bit of working out, then that requires pen and paper. So and the just the having a pen and paper in front of you, and you just there's plenty of reports and research that shows the way that your brain reacts to actually physically having a pen and paper and doing some stuff is quite different than just purely sitting in front of a digital screen. They're quite different. So it's, I hope that is an answer that Michelle had explained.
Yeah,
but
so one of the questions we get from parents, and that you solved this for me at the last time we did it, is they'll say, I don't want to use, can you tell me something different to Math Online? And sorry, guys, if this seems like a commercial, but we just love Maths Online. So I want something different to Maths Online because I don't want my kids on the computer all the time. And I found out that you can actually print out, I know you can print out the worksheets in high school, but you can actually print out and make yourself little workbooks for the stuff in the primary as well, can't you?
Yeah. So anything that is, and I hope I'm right saying this. I'm just trying to think of this, if there's any aspects of the program that I wouldn't be right. But I think every part of our program can be, you can create a printable version of it. And in
the kindy classes, kindy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, most of you could solve a lot of those problems just by looking at them without having to solve them. So you don't have to be online all the time if you're using Maths Online, because the whole curriculum is there for you and you can print it off. But so you don't have to be on the computer all day. And it also, that can solve the problem with some of the if you've got a few kids wanting to use it. Can more than one child, so you buy anyway, we'll talk about that later. All right. Sure. Amanda, any more questions? I saw there was one about times tables, but we've kind of answered that.
Yeah, and a comparison between Maths UC. Your opinion on the Maths Online. Maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, I don't feel like we can talk about that on this one, but we'll just say that we don't recommend that one because it doesn't really follow the Australian curriculum. Okay.
We've also just had a couple about the diagnostic tests, Pat. When do you suggest they do the diagnostic test? Do you suggest at the end of the year or after each topic? Or the start of a topic and then at the end of the topic again?
Look, the start of a topic, if your child hasn't been exposed to any of that sort of stuff, then probably not the start of a topic, because you don't want to just give them a test and they're getting everything wrong if they haven't seen anything. But I guess if certainly at the end of a topic, though, I think a diagnostic test is great to see how they've sort of, got that whole topic. The difference might be is when, if you're first starting to use, our program or another program, to find out where your kid's at, then that makes sense to use a diagnostic test then to sort of see, okay, what they do know, what they don't know, what they need some extra bit of help in. So possibly as a starting point when you're using the program for the first time, but after that, I would suggest, rather than do it before a topic, then more so do it after the topic. That said, the difference might be is that, because some topics are very similar to 1 year's topic, grade 4 might be very similar to grade 3 if you have a look at it and sort of see what you've covered, what you're going to be covering. And there's a lot of repeating lessons, and that's just the way maths is. It builds on top of each other. So if you think that your child did very well in year 3 at that particular topic, and you're about to start it, in year 4, that topic, or very similar, a diagnostic test at that stage might be good, because they might have a lot of success already. And then you actually know, okay, well, I probably don't need necessarily to spend a lot of time. You still might review those lessons, but you could quite expect that those lessons can be done quite quickly, which is great.
And if your sort of kids getting like 100% all the time,
yep,
and they got through everything, there's no real need to do a diagnostic test, is there?
No, that's right. You might do a diagnostic test a bit later on as a bit of a recap, like when I say later on, 3 or 4 months later on, see if they remember it all. That might be useful.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't, if you've just done the particular topic and they've just flown through it, I wouldn't necessarily think you need to do the diagnostic test.
Mm-hmm. Look, I saw one question that was interesting there, because they sort of just pop up, and someone said something about the Verdict Indian maths program or something, and I thought, you probably know a little bit about it because you're just about to launch in India, aren't you, your maths program?
We are. We're just about to launch, and the program Verdict. I know there's a bunch of them actually. There's a gazillion Indian programs, I got to say, and we'll be one of them. But that one you said.
Okay.
I don't know.
Amanda,
I think we're good. If there are really specific questions, maybe I can put a link to your website anyway, Pat, if we don't get to those sort of questions. But
sure,
I think we're good with the questions. Thank you.
And since we talked about India, I'll just put my my Australian cap on. That's my cricket cap. So I'll just the Indian thing is, we're doing it with my nephew, who is the current Australian captain. I don't know if any of you guys follow cricket so much, but Pat Cummins is his name. So he's our ambassador over in India. So
wow, amazing! That's a good introduction.
So that'll be a good fun project to be involved with.
Yeah. Okay, now let's move on to high school, and I think this is where a lot of parents really start to struggle because they don't feel confident in maths anymore. So how important do you think it is for homeschooling parents to know algebra, geometry, statistics and probability before they enter into teaching their kids maths?
Yeah, okay, that's a great question. I know we joked about that that if you don't know all those things, then you are a very bad parent. In fact, they're probably an evil parent. But seriously,
which is most of us.
No, look, seriously, most parents don't know all that, and really, why would you? Because you've done it such a long time ago, and it is an interesting thing, because you'll often be asked as a parent, by your child, when am I ever going to do this in the real world, or whenever I get older.
And so when you homeschool your child.
That's right. I know, as a teacher, I used to say to the kids when they say that, I said, well, you need to know that certainly for the exam coming up in 3 weeks. So, but in reality, in terms of when do kids learn or need to know maths as they get older. I think I'll answer. I mean, I've asked that question myself, so I'll just answer that before jumping back to your question. It's a good answer to that is to tell the kids, well, you by doing maths, you're learning a lot about logic. You're building a logical mind. You're spotting numbers and patterns. And if you observe and can understand and see patterns in maths and then in real life, I mean, even behavioral patterns, with people you're going to deal with. So there's a lot of abstract things that, and because it's a little bit abstract, sometimes it is hard, for kids to understand until they get older. But if you can sort of take that premise and say, look, maths is a subject that, there's certain components you definitely will use, particularly finance, okay, having a good understanding of finance, which funnily enough is probably one of the least topics that is taught in maths. So probably one of the most important topics that should be taught in maths actually isn't really part of many curriculums, strangely enough. But the whole idea of that, you're becoming a good problem solver, and the ability to be a good problem solver will serve you very well, as you grow older and into your adult life. So that said, Michelle, I've actually forgotten what your question was. So can you go back and just ask me what your question was?
So how important it is for parents
right,
to know algebra, geometry, statistics.
Okay, well, it's not that important. It's not that important, but it is important that you can give your kids instruction on how to do stuff. I mean, besides our program, which obviously I like, there are plenty of other programs that are free online and so on, like some YouTube stuff and so on. I guess the difficulty with other programs that I've seen, if you're going for free resources, like on Khan Academy, I know that's very well known and is used somewhat by some people I know. I guess some of the difficulty there is that there are some great lessons taught, but the consistency of the teaching isn't necessarily there.
The sequential aspect.
The sequential, and then for us, we've always had the premise that, like, if you've got a kid for 15 minutes, try to teach them something to them in about 5 minutes and get them to practice on it for 10 minutes, right? So like a 15-minute period, like that period of time, where I've seen lots of videos that go on for 15 minutes, and the teacher might be showing something, and then they talk about something else and talk about. By that stage, your kids are falling asleep, right? So that's
they don't necessarily have the practice with it either.
They got to practice after that. They're sort of worn out their thinking. So I guess as long as you as a parent can give your kids access to some quality instruction and teaching, and then that they're able to then the kids are able to practice almost immediately. As a parent, as long as you're aware, you can sort of it really is a supervisory role at that stage. Okay, it's at once you get into years 7, 8, 9, 10, I know most parents find it difficult on the math side of things. Often the humanities side of things is really well covered, and I think that just I'm thinking it's to do with because if a lot of mums are involved in the homeschooling, in my experience, a lot of the mums are fantastic in the humanities, and they can obviously be very good at maths as well. But I haven't found too many mums who aren't all excellent at humanities. They just are, right? But I guess though, if there is a struggle, they might be struggling in the when it becomes the math side.
Okay, so this would be a scenario that happened to me.
Yep.
So I would have a lesson, and so say she's in year 9, and she's done some lesson and she hasn't understood it, and she stops.
Yep.
And then she comes to me and she goes, "Oh, Mum, I don't know how to do surds or something."
Okay.
And I look at the lesson and I go, "Gosh, I don't know how to do that either." And I don't know how to then where to go. Okay. So do I just look on the search feature on Maths Online for surds, and we just do a few more lessons on surds to try to work it out? Because there will be other lessons, won't there?
Yeah, there'll be other lessons. Yeah. So that, I mean, if there's if you have a lesson on SERDs, unless it's the very first lesson on SERDs, then there will be, there will be some earlier material. If it's the very first lesson on SERDs and you're still struggling, that's not necessarily that easy to fix, because the first lesson on most topics hopefully is designed so that it is quite easy to understand. That said, I know a lot of kids and parents, they like, if they've tried something and they can't get an answer, then the ability to look at worked solutions is also a great tool. I remember, when I was back in year 12 studying myself for the HSC in New South Wales, we let's say I was a pretty bright student, but let's say I might not have been the most conscientious student. So I found myself a little bit behind the rest of my class. I did play a lot of football, so I use that as an excuse. But I found studying, we had HSC past papers and work solutions. And that was the first time I actually saw how powerful studying from examples with worked solutions were. And I know a lot of people sort of don't see that as they're just not aware that how powerful that is as a learning tool. So you've got your worksheet, you've had a shot at your worksheet, haven't got everything right, or there's some things you got wrong. If you look then at the worked solutions, it is amazing, because they're step by step. You can sort of see, oh, okay, yeah, I can sort of, and I can understand that now. So I would say
another thing I found was I used an American textbook for a while, and they explain things in a different way to Australia. So the one that I remember particularly hitting was functions, using the word functions all the time, and I hadn't really come across that in Australia. Do you think that that can be a barrier for parents? Because if they're looking around to try to find a solution, and then they're trying all these US sites or YouTube videos to try to find it, if they explain it in terminology that we don't use in Australia, they just get further confused.
Yeah, there can be. I'd suggest then, because some US books are really good, US texts are really good. So if you've got a US text, I wouldn't say get rid of it. No. What I would do though is to say, if there's anything that is not, you don't sort of recognize the term, and that I would just jump on do a Google search and saying, you just say, I'm getting stuck on this word function. Is there another? Is that word function used in a different way in maths in Australia or something? I think using web searches is a great tool as well, in terms of terminology that you're sort of stuck on, that you can just by asking that simple question.
So how long for high school? How long every day do you think they should be spending doing their maths?
Yeah, look, I would say, sort of early years, like year 7, year 8, I think 30 to 40 minutes would be good. 30 to 40 minutes. As they get a bit older, turn that into 40 to 50 minutes, up to an hour. But if they're working solidly, they cover a lot of work in that hour. So I would do that probably 4 times a week, maybe 5 times a week. If the kid loves maths, do it every day. If they really don't like it, maybe give them a day off. But
Amanda, do you have any questions? Any questions popping up? You're muted at the moment. You're muted. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, it's all happening here. Just so if they're not understanding a concept, say something that they're looking at a tutorial through Maths Online, would you say it is worth, the Google search is the best idea, but would it also be worth possibly having a textbook as a resource just for the later years if they're not understanding some of the tutorials? And if so, do you have any recommendations? But would you suggest having an independent
Can I
resource?
interrupt before he answers that? And because you can answer this question at the same time, is we were asked this yesterday in our workshop yesterday, is Maths Online good enough to use as a single
That was another
curriculum?
question.
Yeah.
for like
So they
advanced
kind of go
maths
together.
careers. Yeah.
Yeah. And when would you recommend using another
supplement.
resource? Yeah. Oh, he's frozen.
Oh, he is frozen. I thought he was really thinking
Yes.
then.
I wonder if
He's in deep thought.
Well,
Deep
while
thought.
he's not there, I'm going to answer this question.
Yeah, and there's a
hope
couple
that
you
he
can
comes
answer.
back. So I know that with Maths Online, Pat says that.
I'm back.
Oh, you're back. You're back.
Oh, he's back.
Okay. All right. Did you hear the question?
I didn't, and I should have told you earlier on that we've had some pretty heavy rains around here, and our internet
Is
In and
playing
out.
up. Yeah. I could.
Yeah.
a bit disrupted the last. Yeah. Sorry,
Okay. So
I missed that. Amanda
No, that's okay.
was finishing a question, and then
Yeah. It links in with one of Michelle's. Do you want to?
I'll say it. So the question is basically, is Maths Online good enough to use on its own? And when should we use a supplement?
Okay, right. If your kid has a real aptitude for maths, and you might think that they would like to do further studies in maths, like in tertiary, then I would certainly get a textbook. And there's a bunch of textbooks, but any textbook will have enough material in it to be very comprehensive. The thing with the textbooks, though, is that the explanations and the examples they use might not be great. Okay, so but the amount of material in a textbook is more than what we've designed Maths Online for. If your kid's going, if they think they're going to probably do some further study. That said, I know we've had a lot of homeschoolers in the States, particularly, who have just used our curriculum and then gone straight to college and done
Engineering.
Yep,
done that. Yeah. So okay, but look, if I'm saying, okay, if I'm getting my child, okay, so as a parent, if I say, okay, if I want my child to eventually go and do, or if they show an aptitude to do further study, I would give them another textbook as well, in addition.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't just leave it to Maths Online, and I definitely would leave it to Maths Online for my kids, because I'm the teacher and they don't like getting taught by dad. So that's an issue.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think parents can, in the high school years, have a bit of a hands-off approach to maths? Can just say, "Oh, just go do your maths." Can we sort of just forget about it and just say, "Have you done your maths online?" Is that enough for us?
Is it? You'd love me to say yes. Well,
that's what I did.
I'll
do have an engineering husband who could answer some things.
Yeah, well, I guess, the whole idea, we got this with that in mind. Yeah, our reporting system, I think, is pretty good in the fact that you get email reports every week. I think it's weekly reports set up, and then you can also log in and see everything all at once. And I guess in terms of setting it, you've got to set the task, right? You've got to start by setting. Well, actually, I think we might have actually introduced something. I think that if we haven't introduced it, I think it's just about.
But I remember when I used to do it, they could just you could pick the grade, and then they could just work through all of the lessons.
Yes,
on all of the
absolutely.
Things.
Yeah, you can do all that. Yeah, you can do all that. So, you can. It is designed as fairly as hands off, because you don't have to do any instructions. All you got to do as a parent is check that it's getting done. So
yeah. That they're actually sort of, I suppose the red flags come if they're not getting 50%, 60%, 70%. Is there a sort of a?
You'd sort of, yeah.
Would you be wanting to get 80% on most of the things?
Probably 70 to 80%. Yeah, for sure. And the other thing too, I think, if you want to be a bit more hands-on, particularly at the start, and then you actually get, while you're very hands-on, you sort of see what they should be getting, I guess. And then you sort of back off a bit. And if they're still getting the same amount and, progressing like that, that's good. If they just fall off a cliff, then you sort of think, well, they're probably not doing things as you'd expect them to do. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're the main things that I wanted to cover, and we've got 8 minutes left. So, Amanda, have you got any more questions there?
Just another one. Do you repeat lessons if they're struggling? But I think you actually said you'd recommend going back and revising things.
yeah, going back, but repeating is fine as well. I mean, some of the when we say repeat lessons, our lessons are designed that you'll have once you've watched the video, do a set of questions, but then even if you've got all of those, say it's 10 questions, even if you've got all those 10 questions right, you're encouraged to do that another 10 questions, because each set of 10 questions bumps you up a little bit in terms of difficulty before you reach what we would say a mastery of that lesson. So I guess that's repeating a lesson a little bit, or repeating questions within a lesson. But yeah, I have no problem at all jumping back and repeating stuff. That's a good idea.
And just another one, I think this has been covered. How many lessons a day would you recommend within the program?
Yeah, well, probably not necessarily lessons a day, more so thinking sort of 20, 25, 30 minutes a day. And again, keeping that up. So and it's
more how they're going with it.
Yeah. So they might do, So I mean, certainly in the primary, like the very early years, you'd probably you wouldn't just do one lesson just once only throughout that year. You'd probably go through.
And can you give people permission? Because we're all so you're getting to the end of the year and you haven't or you're starting this year.
Yep.
And you think, I didn't completely finish year 2 last year. Should I finish year 2, or should I just jump straight to year 3?
Look, I would jump to year 3. I would start a new year fresh, knowing that you've got plenty of time later on. If you're saying, Michelle, you haven't finished this little bit on fractions as an example, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't worry. Start year 3, work your way through. When you get to fractions, just jump back and do the other fraction bit that you missed out on.
If they're having trouble.
If they're having trouble, which they possibly will, if they haven't done it at all.
Yeah.
But just be flexible. That I wouldn't. Yeah, but I always like the idea of starting a new year afresh.
Yeah, I think it helps.
I think that helps.
Yeah.
Can I ask the question verbally?
Yeah.
Mine goes into year 7 this year, and we started maths with him with Singapore maths, and it's pretty high demanding. And my sister said in the year 7 and 8 maths is very, very difficult in the Singapore maths. So he hates maths.
Okay.
But that might have been partly my fault, because when you first start, you're kind of trying to get them to keep up with the day-to-day. How would you encourage someone not to hate it so much once you've stuffed it up, I guess? And going forward, would you keep going with the same mathematics, or because we do have your maths online as well, which he loves doing?
Okay. Mm-hmm. I always think kids' level of interest or hating or loving maths is dependent on how much success they have. So I think it sounds like your son hates it probably because he hasn't had much success recently, possibly. So my suggestion would be is actually sort of maybe go back a little bit at a level that he's actually can be successful at, and then you can figure out what your son responds to in terms of encouragement and so on. But if he starts getting some success in it, I'd sort of reward him with something.
Yeah.
Figure out
he loves the maths online bit, because it's easier.
Well, can I just say, we went to so Maths Online came out when my son was in about year 7 or 8. When it was sponsored by McDonald's, so I don't know what year that was, but and so we finished Singapore Maths, and then we bought the Singapore Maths High School text. I don't know if it's exactly the same one you've got, because Singapore Maths is like a whole different lot of companies. And the problem is, yeah, he's 28 now, so the book does look a bit different. But he hated it as well. And he's a doctor. He's really good at maths. And it was just the layout. The layout is terrible when they get to high school. It's all small. It's not like the Singapore primary. And we tried about 4 different maths textbooks, trying to find the perfect maths textbook, and we just couldn't find one. So we went to Maths Online. And he just excelled. So, and he got high level maths. He's doctor now. So I wouldn't. It's a different. It's just because that's written for schools. It's not written for homeschoolers, and I just couldn't get success with that. He hated it intensely. Okay, sorry. You probably can't answer that because you're Maths Online.
What I can answer is that the actual layout and design of stuff really can be intimidating for kids. Like I can't believe that Cambridge and that they'll pull out a textbook that's 700 pages thick, and you give that to a year 7 or year 8 kid. I mean, how intimidating is that? I mean, it's just and it doesn't need to be anywhere near that as much. They just do make it that big because they have to justify the price they're charging. It's so counterintuitive of actually what would make kids less frightened of math.
Just got a couple of people asking, they're using other programs. Is it easy to switch over to Maths Online? Is it sort of a streamless transition? People want to switch over from other programs they're currently using.
Yeah. No, it's very easy just to switch over, and like I said, if you're switching over, and that diagnostic tests at the start are quite useful. And I'm not sure whether everybody knows, but if they want to use our program and it doesn't sort of suit them, we understand. And so we've got a 12-month money back guarantee. So
wow, I didn't know that.
Oh, that's good.
No, I don't think there's any other program that I found in the world that offers that, but we've been offering that since 2001. Before we were online, we had the old CDs and DVDs and so on. So we've always offered that. So we think we think that's pretty fair, because you don't really know. Well, I could talk all day about it, but yeah, unless you actually use it with your kids and you're using it on the inside, that's when you really know if it's going to work or not.
And the other thing, Amanda, I don't know if you can find this. You'll have to be fast. But Maths Online offers a 50% discount for homeschoolers, and and we've got a Maths Online discount. If you can find that, Amanda, pop it in the chat. And you just have to prove that you're a homeschooler, so that you will get asked a question. So don't pass it on to all your friends and say, hey, you can get a 50% discount. You do have to show some evidence that you're actually.
How's that for quick?
Is that the discount one?
Yeah.
With the My Homeschool? Okay, good. So you can get 50% discount, and that's such a savings. And it's up to like 4 or 5 kids or whatever. So, you can use that for all of your kids.
Even more than 4 and 5 kids, for sure.
Yeah. Well, how many kids do you have, Pat?
10.
Very impressive.
Amazing.
Very impressive.
Well, and how many of those are good at maths?
Yeah.
They're not all good. They're not all good at maths. There's a mixed bag. So it is interesting. So.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
Michelle.
You go.
We keep getting the same question, which I just want to ask you. Would you recommend a scientific calculator for people? We've got a few people asking that question. Or doesn't it matter?
They're all pretty similar. Now, I mean, I have a personal preference for Casio, but that's maybe because I've used it a long time. But there's Casio, there's Canon, actually I'm not sure if they're still Canon, but anyway. But no, I think they're all pretty similar.
We use Casio at school. I remember using Casio. Good, reliable one. I think that. That's it for the questions,
is that it?
Michelle.
All right. Well, it's 1:01. So thank you everybody for coming along today, and thank you so much, Pat. It's just so great to get all your information, and you just so candidly share with us all this info.
That's okay. Great. I
People
love
are
it.
saying thank you to you in the chat. So we're going to finish up now.